welcome to Young Money. I'm Nozi Pombanjwa. Today we find ourselves in the city of Johannesburg in Maboneng. We're about to meet up with the founder and owner of Curiocity hostels. His name is Bheki Dube. He started off as a photographer, loving to take pictures of the city, and evolved that love and passion into the hospitality space. And today he boasts as one of the key attractions for international visitors wanting to visit and experience authentic Johannesburg and an authentic experience of Maboneng. Later on in the show, we're going to be introducing you to a young man who started off as a taxi driver to finish his law degree, then interned and worked for one of the biggest law firms in South Africa. Today, he has his own law firm and sits on the board of South African Airways. That's Philip Buthelezi coming up later. Right now, though, let's go meet Bheki. So, Bheki, there must be a story behind Curiocity Hotel. How did that come about?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like any Joburg kid, you know, I grew up in the city, photographing, skateboarding through the city. And that's what really, you know, basically grew my passion for Johannesburg inner city and understanding its DNA. So before I opened Curiosity, we were already doing walking tours in the inner city. At that time, there were only 1 or 2 companies doing that. And I think really the next natural progression was to open a space where you could host people for a longer period. So instead of just 3 hours on a tour and then they fly off, now you've changed their perception on one space. How do you take it further? How do you create experiences that last longer? And I guess, yeah, the next step was really to open up Curiosity.
And of course, you must have first-hand experience of how sentiments and perceptions about Johannesburg have shifted and changed, if at all. What were the early days like compared to the kind of sentiment and perception you're seeing now?
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I think Joburg in the last, I'll say, even 2 years, has gone through major change. It's won a few awards of being one of the best visited cities in the world, in Africa. So it's leading tourism at this stage. And obviously when we started off, you know, like people will be like, Joburg, nah, we're only even spending hours at the airport, let alone coming into the inner city. And I think with neighborhoods like Maboneng and a few of the urban regenerated spaces in the inner city, that's slowly but surely starting to change how people are seeing the inner city environment and how people are relating to it. And I guess with spaces like Curiosity, we're able now to be a foundation, you know, and an entry level in people coming into the space and eventually exploring Joburg for a longer period.
Talk to us a little bit about your clientele. Where are they coming in from? Which other markets seem to be attracted to the South African offering? And are there any insights around that?
So yeah, I mean, we basically aim at attracting millennials. And I think they're such a unique, I call them the curious urbanites, you know, they're such a unique group of people. They're also such an easy pleasing group, you know. They've got a bed, they want to experience stuff, they're out during the day, collecting stories, coming back, sharing those stories. So that's our main target audience. But I think with models like Curiosity, which is quite a flash packer model, that's been able to also attract, you know, a typical CEO of a business who's wanting to connect with real stories itself. And basically, you know, the German-speaking markets are basically our most visiting countries itself.
And why is that?
And the reason, I think it's, one, Germans are quite an adventurous group of people. You also, I think, have a lot of volunteer tourism within South Africa that's able to attract such groups of people. And I think you're also dealing with the landscape with not too much political turmoil. So that makes it easier for them to be able to travel to. And the rand, man, is very weak. So people just want to spend, you know?
Absolutely. Now, when one takes a look at the space, I mean, it's a very distinctive kind of space. Maybe talk to us about what exactly have you packaged here at Curiosity that you think this is the thing that has differentiated us in the market?
Yeah, so I think, one, we're interested in buildings with architectural merit. So the idea really with Curiosity is to do 50 across Africa.
All right.
And the premises where we are were formerly premises to Pacific Press, who were a printing and publishing company. So they printed a lot of publications for the Black Sash movement, and then eventually a very famous publication called Fighting Talk. So it comes with a lot of history, heritage.
And this is the same sort of approach that you would then adopt as you move into other parts of the country and into the continent?
Yeah, I think, I mean, each site will be very different. Joburg, we've basically taken inspiration from the history and heritage of Johannesburg, So you'll see the corrugated iron is a continuous theme throughout the space because those were the first shanty homes in Joburg. In Durban, we've gone with a very different approach. You know, we've gotten a lot of inspiration from basically the first surfers in Durban. Durban's got amazing architecture, so we've a lot of breeze blocking the space itself. So each city will be or each curiosity will be influenced by the heritage and history and aesthetic of the cities that we
What does the pipeline look like? You know, how many curiosities in how many years are you looking at?
Yeah, so I mean, we've got about 54 countries in Africa, and the idea is to have at least an establishment in each country in Africa. And in the first 3 years, we've done 2, and we're hoping in 2017 we roll out at least 6. So we're starting to look at countries like Mozambique, other neighboring countries, and also collaborating with local African entrepreneurs within these spaces itself.
So I want to go back to your own personal journey. I mean, starting off with a love for photography, and that has evolved into this new space of running Curiosity and spreading it across the continent. If you were to reflect back on that journey, which parts do you think might have been the toughest parts of the journey, and in which ways did that challenge you?
Yeah. So I think like any business, the toughest parts really are one, securing finance, you know. Also, secondly, being able to manage cash flow. And those were probably the hardest, and also eventually finding the right stuff, people with the same vision, people who are basically key players within the business itself. So those were quite the hardest parts. But I think I've also had a really great, strong mentor who's learned a lot of lessons, and I've been able to basically grasp as much from him, and he's able to share and say, okay, if you see this obstacle, take this path.
So if you could undo one thing, now that you know what the toughest moments are generally like, if you could undo one thing in the journey, what would that be?
Man, I would have brought bookkeepers and accountants earlier into business.
So you were doing the bookkeeping yourself?
All by myself, yeah. So in the beginning, it was basically from me checking in clients, to me running the bar, to me doing the tours, to me doing night shift. And eventually, because it's your baby, you know, you wanna be hands-on, but then you end up learning that eventually you need to delegate. Eventually you need to bring in a marketing team. Eventually you need to bring in key staff that are able to run these things, and you become a chess player, and you delegate, but you're still entrenched in the DNA of the space, but you're able to now start even dreaming even bigger and finding new sites and locations, and creating and curating these stories, you know. And
oftentimes I think this is such an important insight that you're sharing, because you can get sucked in working in the business and neglect working on the business, which is something you really have to focus on as the founder. But if you were to share with other entrepreneurs who are potentially in the same space as you, so they've started their businesses and they're looking to make the transition that you've made in terms of letting go of all the portfolios and beginning to bring on other skills and other people so that they work on the business, what advice would you have for them around how do you make that transition? How do you let go without feeling that you're losing touch with the essence of what you've been building?
Yeah, it's a tough one, that, you know, especially for medium enterprises. But I think really it's about sometimes just going with your gut feeling than any pre-planned ideology or any strategy. Sometimes you realize that it's just a heavy load, and you need to bring in more people, and it might not work. Like, you know, we've had people come and go, but those that are basically key have remained with us, you know, for the last few years that we've been running. So it's about just going with your gut feeling, really, and understanding. It's about also understanding when the workload is too hectic, you need to be able to just let go. And so one of the things that's really interesting is your location, given what we've been seeing in South Africa around the student protests and so on. Braamfontein, where we know the protests have spilled into, is not too far from where you are. Has there been any impact on the business? And have you seen, even just with what's happening, influencing or impacting on the sentiment and the perceptions that your clients have of the country? Yeah, I mean, listen, one, we've also seen an increased number in journalists coming into the city, staying with us, wanting to document this. So political science students also coming to basically stay with us and being able to write about this. Obviously, it's not a... when protests become violent, there becomes a stigma around the country itself, you know. But it hasn't directly affected us. We've had, like, you know, before, be it xenophobic attacks and so forth, that's basically had a huge impact on us. But currently with the student protests, we haven't had much of a basically a negative impact. Yeah. However, though, on more the experiences side of things, you then start to choose your routes wisely. Yeah. You know, because you don't want to be stuck in the middle of a protest. Right. And you've got people with you on tour and so forth. So within the Maboneng area, nothing yet. Yeah. Yeah. Which of course it's one of those touchwood situations.
Yeah, completely. But as we begin to wrap, I mean, it would be really interesting to also understand what you think the government could do from a regulatory perspective to help boost the business. So, I mean, on the one hand, we've been very well aware of sort of the visa and the regulation issues, and that was a big thing and a big impact on the industry. But what do you think could really be a good bolster and a good boost for the business that could be tweaked at a government level?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, the people that are promoting on a national level tourism need to understand their product. You know, you've got, to a point that you've got even locals haven't engaged with the city in 30 years, which seems very absurd, you know. But I think the people that are promoting South Africa first need to understand products. They need to come on basically tours or packages, experiences, spaces, so that when they are marketing Johannesburg, when they are marketing South Africa, at least they know what they're talking of, you know, they've got first-hand experience. So I think on that level, the representatives that are marketing South Africa need to understand the product itself. I think also it is quite key for more campaigns that promote domestic tourism. I think once you're able to change perception of the domestic traveler, are you only able to change the perception of an international traveler coming into the space itself? We've seen, I mean, in Gauteng, certain departments have done very well. It's obviously still more work that needs to be put into the space. But also a very important one, and one that I'll stress very much, it's important from a tour operating point of view to basically accommodation point of view for government officials to be able to be with key players at grassroots level. Right. So we don't want to see the same hotels that are being marketed. You know what I mean? We want, we're the people on ground, we're the people that are basically giving real experiences. So encourage people to walk the near rubber neck on a tourist bus. Encourage people to have first-hand experiences. And I think it's important for that. That's why travelers are coming here. They're not coming here to experience another Europe. They're coming here to experience South Africa. And we've got hidden gems, we've got great spaces, and
Great spaces and hidden gems. This is what the international traveler is looking for in South Africa, and in particular when they come to the Curiosity Hotel. It's all about real, authentic experiences, and this team is certainly doing that. A very big thank you to Bheki Dube, who is the brainchild and of course the owner of Curiosity Hotels. They are also beginning to branch out into the continent, already in 2 countries, and looking to hit the big 54 very, very soon. So do look out, and of course if you're in around Johannesburg, do pay them a visit. Let's take a short break, but when we come back, we're catching up with another young South African who used to drive taxis for a living and today is running his own law firm, sits on the board of South African Airways, and has a phenomenal story to tell.